Hello and welcome to this webinar. In this webinar, you're going to learn how to leverage and market yourself to employers using new experiences. My name is Natasha Munasinghe, and I'm the CEO of a training and education organization called Frank. I was also formerly an international student, born in Sri Lanka and lived in the Fiji Islands before coming to Australia to study law at university. At Frank, just a quick background, we have worked with about 88,000 young people and students like yourself to help you really prepare for future jobs and careers. So in this webinar, I'm going to talk to you about two things. In part one, we're going to cover what a professional brand is and your 3 brand words. And in part two, you are going to be able to identify what makes you unique by looking at your top skills, values, and passions. Let's get started with part one, learning what a professional brand is. Now, don't worry if you have never heard of this term before. In a moment, you will know exactly what it is. To help us understand it better, I'm going to show you a couple of different pictures of fairly famous people, and I want you to have a think about the words you would use to describe them. So, first person, you know who this is, right? It's Elon Musk. He started companies like Tesla, PayPal, SpaceX, and more. Now, what are some words that really come to mind when you think of Elon Musk? Well, to me, he is entrepreneurial, innovative, intelligent, powerful, and visionary. Are there any others that come to mind for you? So let's try another person. We know who this lady is, right? Michelle Obama. Now, words I would use to describe her are successful, smart, down-to-earth, and a philanthropist. She cares about the community. Now, even though we don't personally know Michelle and Elon, we kind of already have an idea of who they are. The words I spoke about, and hopefully you thought about, essentially describe their brand. We identify certain personality traits with them. It's what they're known for and how we perceive them. And that's exactly what a professional brand is. It's what people think of you when you're not in the room. Your brand can also bring you a lot of opportunity. For example, for Michelle and Elon, how do you think their brand really helps them? Well, it probably opens a lot of doors for them. They are respected and influential, and I'm sure it gets them a lot of money and fame also. Now, having a brand isn't only for celebrities or famous people. We also have our own professional brand, a reputation. And people are judging us and assessing us whether we like it or not. And this is especially so when we're looking for jobs and career opportunities. So I think it's really in your interest to take control of this perception and create a perception that works for you. Your professional brand can get you hired, promoted, referred, noticed, awarded, rewarded, and featured. But also, your brand can be positive or negative. That means you can be known for good stuff or bad stuff. And we definitely want to focus on creating a positive brand for ourselves. So let's do our first activity. What 3 words would you choose to form your professional brand? Think of a hypothetical job interview situation. Let's say you leave the interview after having answered all the questions. What's the impression you want to have left behind with your interviewers? Think of 3 words that really captures that impression. And feel free to pause this webinar and have a few moments to think of these. Now, we're just making a start, so it doesn't need to be perfect. Ensure also you choose words that you really connect with, that feel real for you. Don't choose words just because they sound good. They really have to authentically represent you. I thought to help you off, I might share with you my words, so my 3/4 hyphen words that form my professional brand. And you know what? It's taken me really a few years to get this right. So my words are integrity, approachable, and results focused. Integrity ensures that when I don't promise something that I can't deliver. It also means that I'm honest about things that I do have time for and also that I don't have time for. I also want to be perceived as approachable, which means people can come and talk to me and tell me both the good news and the bad news. And finally, being results focused means I can deliver on what I say I would, and people can trust and be confident that I'll deliver. Now, have a go and think of your 3 words that form your professional brand And you can definitely use some of my 3 words also. Now, if you're having a little bit of trouble figuring what these words are, think of what you don't want to be perceived as, and then choose kind of the opposite word to that. Or think of someone you admire at university or in the professional world, and think about what attributes about them you admire, and perhaps those things are what you yourself want to be perceived as. So hopefully now you have made a start with getting your 3 words together for your professional brand. So where and how can you actually use these 3 words in real life career situations? Well, once you've got your 3 words, you can practically make it useful to help you guide your actions. For example, if teamwork or leadership form your professional brand, then you have to ensure you show that you work well in teams and show leadership qualities. You can also use them during job interview situations, especially in the beginning of the interview, where most interviewers tend to say something like, or tend to ask something like, "Tell me about yourself." You can use your brand words to stay focused on your response and to also help you lead with a strong, confident answer. Or you can measure things like your cover letter, resume, and LinkedIn profile against your 3 words and see if you are conveying the impression that you want to convey. For example, if one of your brand words was to be a strong communicator, ask yourself if this is coming across. Now, let's kick off with part 2 of this webinar. Here, you will be able to identify what makes you unique, especially your skills, your values, and your passions. Let's start with your skills. Hopefully, through your recent work experience, you are starting to see what your strengths are. To identify your top 3 skills, we're going to do our second activity. Now, you will need to pause this webinar and download the Skills Assessment Worksheet. The skills on this Skills Assessment Worksheet are called employability skills. They're the skills and knowledge that Australian employers look for. As you're doing this activity, please know it's not a test in any way. This is just an honest chance for some self-reflection. Now, referring to this Skills Assessment Worksheet, for each skill, on column number 2, write a number between 1 and 5. If you're not confident and competent in that skill, you put a 1. You put a 5 if you consider yourself an expert and are confident with that skill. Take 5 to 10 minutes to do this, and feel free to Google any skills you're not familiar with. This is not the time to be humble or shy. You should definitely have a few skills where you rate yourself a 5. Once you have completed that rating for all skills, then make a note of which you would consider your top 3 skills. You most likely put a 4 or a 5 against these skills. Take a moment to do this if you need to. Finally, are there any skills that you put a 1 or 2 next to? So these are the ones you're not so competent in or confident in. Ask yourself if any of these could potentially hold you back in your future career if you don't improve on them. You may not have any, but if you do, make a note of this in column 3. Now, just an example regarding this weak skill from my own life. I run a company, but I'm definitely not too familiar with accounting or the numbers around a business. Now, as someone that runs a business, this is something I really need to know. It's how I know whether I'm making a profit or a loss, for example. So instead of ignoring that I wasn't confident with this, I found a great accountant to help me understand the key numbers and to really understand the business. And that's exactly what you need to do. If you have a skill, you need to improve on it by finding and taking some action. I call it a mitigation strategy. Now, let's say an example of yours would be time management as a weak area for you. So some things you could do is maybe you want to do an online time management course so you can learn about key time management tools and how to prioritize. Or you can think of someone in your friendship circle or family that manages their time well and ask them how they do it. Perhaps they can teach you some simple tricks and techniques. The important thing is to take action and ensure that your weaknesses don't cost you later on in life. Now, the final section to part 2 is regarding the top 3 skills from your skills assessment worksheet that you identified a few minutes earlier. One of the most important things for your future employers is that they want to see examples of where you demonstrated these skills. It's not good enough to just say that I'm good at teamwork or leadership or app development. You need to show them how you're good by sharing experience and examples of these skills in action. To help you communicate your skills, I wanted to introduce you to a simple structure called the STAR method. So S stands for the situation. This is where you give context to your example. Give as much detail as possible when talking about the experience. Where did it take place? How many people were involved? This is also where you should identify the problem you needed to solve. The second thing, T, stands for tasks. This is what was expected of you, your responsibilities and your roles. A stands for actions. These are your what you actually did in this situation. What steps did you take to actually solve the problem you identified earlier? And finally, the R stands for results. This is what you achieved because you took those actions. Your results can be positive things like you beating your sales quota, but it could also refer to things where you tried something and you failed or you didn't get what you want. If things didn't work out well, then tell them what you learned from this process. This is valid too. So what experiences actually count? What can you actually talk about? So when looking for experiences and situations that demonstrate these skills, they can come from many areas of your life, your university studies, your involvement in clubs and societies, and other extracurricular activities on campus, as well as volunteering and charitable activities. Your part-time work, even if you're working at a fast food restaurant or a retail shop, those also count, as do internships and work experience opportunities. Your life outside university, traveling, involvement in sports organizations, even religious organizations, these also count. Australian employees like to see that you have done more than just study and achieved academic outcomes. Australian employers also consider part-time work, no matter where you work, and volunteering as important aspects when they're looking for future employees. That's something we need to keep in mind. So let me give you an example of how this STAR method works. Let's say one of my top skills is organizational skills. Using the STAR method, this is how I would communicate the skill. For a situation, I would say the situation was some volunteering I did with a local youth mental health charity. It was a small team with around 6 people who worked at the office together as a team and had to put on events and raise awareness about mental health. The organization was just being set up and everyone on the team was relatively young. The problem for the organization was that everyone felt like that there was a lot of time being wasted during meetings, and this really took away from our time doing real work that was of value. That's the situation. Second bit is on tasks. The tasks I had to do were to ensure that everyone in the office was aware of and prepared for the monthly meetings we had. The team was relatively new and just getting to know each other. I also had to ensure everyone knew their own role and contributions at each meeting. My actions. I got regular feedback to ensure everyone was aware of our monthly meetings. And I got feedback from the previous meeting and created a new agenda for the upcoming meeting. I sent this agenda to everyone 1 week before the meeting took place so everyone knew what to expect. I also sent 2 reminders to people before the actual meeting date and told them to let them know also if they weren't able to make it to let me know. And as the team was new, I also made sure that we used informal icebreakers at the beginning of each meeting to get people to feel more comfortable with each other. Results. So what happened as a result of all my actions? Well, as a result of being more organized with our meeting approach, my team reported that they felt much more prepared for meetings and knew what to expect. Meetings ended on time or before the scheduled time, leaving more time for normal work tasks. There were also very few unnecessary, unscheduled meetings taking place. And the meetings actually helped us get to know each other better. And we got through all the other agenda items with little time wasted. So that was an example of how you could use your STAR method to really help you come across as confident and professional. Now, your homework item. Ensure that you identify one STAR method example for all of your top 3 skills and really store them in your mental backpack. You can talk about the STAR method examples in your resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profiles. And you can definitely speak about them during interviews as well as during professional and career networking events when sharing with people what you actually do. The final 2 things I will ask you to identify for yourself, which is unique to you, are your values, that's what's important to you, and your passions and interests. These are things you like to do and really enjoy doing. So let's talk about your values, the things that are important to you. Examples of values could be the environment, animal rights, spending time with family, travel, and so on. Let's get to activity 3 of this webinar regarding your values. And remember, you can pause at any time. Take a moment now to think about your 3 most important values. These are the things you will not compromise on. Write them down and ensure that you keep these in mind when it comes to looking for jobs and organizations to work for. Also, make time to ensure that your values are met, even if you have to do them after work hours. You can speak about and share your values with potential employers, as this gives people an insight into who you are. If you do things or work where you're not paying attention to your values, you may feel that you're not really motivated or losing purpose. Now, let's get to the final activity, activity 4 of this webinar. Let's look at your passions and interests. These are the things you enjoy doing, and sometimes that may come quite easily to you. As a quick activity, identify at least one interest or passion you have. Now, this doesn't have to be related to what you're studying. It can be something completely different, like a sport, traveling, learning languages, listening to music, gaming, so on. Don't be scared of being different. Whenever the opportunity presents itself, ensure that you speak about your values and passions during key job situations like interviews and networking situations. Communicating these helps you to stand out and also helps people to relate to you. It gives them an idea of your character and who you are. So take a moment, if you need to identify your passions and interests. It's also important to know that Australian employers don't just focus on academic grades. They like students to have other experiences like volunteering, travel, sport, and part-time work. They also like to know about your values, your interests, and passions outside your studies. All these things really help to show how unique your personality and strengths are. Now, to conclude this webinar, just to recap, I wanted to show you what you've learned, and hopefully some of you built confidence around these things. In part 1, we covered what a professional brand is, and you identified your 3 brand words. In part 2, you identified what makes you unique by looking at your top 3 skills, your values, and your passions. Now, to conclude, I also wanted to give you a little note about this webinar. The Upskill Through Work Integrated Learning project is co-funded through Study New South Wales Partner Projects Program and the University of Newcastle. Study New South Wales is a dedicated unit within the Department of Industry, and it's focused on making the experiences of international students better, safer, and more enjoyable when they live and study in New South Wales. Study New South Wales supports partner projects that align with its objectives and are jointly funded and delivered with organizations in the international education sector. If you want to know more information about Study New South Wales, the website is on the screen. Thank you for listening to this webinar. You can connect with me and the Frank team on our Facebook and LinkedIn channels. Thank you.